Now, as you know, there's a renewed attempt to get the Tinubu administration to launch a national dialogue to address what advocates say is the single most important issue facing Nigeria today, a new, more inclusive people's constitution that can foster unity and promote equality. As you know, this country has endured withering ethnic divisions and a profound sense of rampant repression, injustice and non-inclusion, and even a civil war, a country where democratic and minority rights are not protected, the rule of law is not respected. How do we end the political polarization that is tearing at the heart of this country? What type of federalism do Nigerians need to implement to guarantee the rights of every citizen and every region? What can Nigerians collectively unite around to ensure that their country succeeds? Well, if you speak to the likes of Senator Seriake Dickson, the Niger Delta politician who was a state attorney general, member of the House of Representatives, and subsequently governor of Bayelsa State for 8 years before becoming the senator representing Bayelsa West in the National Assembly, he'll say that what Nigeria needs is a national dialogue leading to a people's constitution that will incorporate a true all-inclusive federal system that celebrates the diversity of Nigeria. Well, for more on his perspective, I'm joined now in the studio by Senator Seriake Dickson, representing Bayelsa West at the National Assembly and who governed Bayelsa State for 8 years. Good to see you again.
Thank you
very much indeed
nice
for
to
coming
see you
in.
too. Thank you.
So once again, calls are getting louder for a national dialogue to address what many believe is the single most important issue. You certainly believe that, facing Nigeria today, which is root and branch constitutional reform, a people's constitution. Just remind us of what your position is on that.
Well, first of all, I want to agree with the position that has been recently canvassed. Well, I mean, this argument didn't start today. The patriots have advanced this argument a long time ago, right from when they had the first leadership in persons of F.R.A. Williams, Chief F.R.A. Williams of blessed memory, and then later Professor Ben Wambuize, and down the line till today. So it's not a recent issue. And as you rightly observed in your introduction, some of us, and I inclusive, are of the view, firstly, that this country needs a people's constitution, a constitution that emanates from the people, a constitution that will lay the groundwork for unity, because you see, the constitutional foundation, the superstructure, is what determines even the economics, so, you know, structure that will be built on it, the political systems that will be built on it, the legal system, and then dealing with the overriding issue of integration and cohesion in this country. We believe that the existing constitution is not a people's constitution. It didn't emanate from the people. The 1999 constitution has been severally amended. You know, started as a decree of the military government, 1990. In fact, it was so bad that in 1998-99, when this democratic dispensation came in, even the political players, and I was a state chairman at that level, you know, didn't even have an idea of what the Constitution looked like. I mean, it was that bad. The Constitution was promulgated to take effect from when President Obasanjo, who was elected president, took his oath of office. And that was when the Constitution, everybody read it and then saw what it looked like.
So basically, it was people were kept in the dark.
Everybody was kept in the dark.
That's extraordinary.
So a number of people have forgotten that unfortunate development. That I'm not sure even President Obasanjo, as well as the 36 state governors in 1998, who stood elections under provisions that were made by a military decree, the transition decree, you know, didn't even know the nation extent of the powers that they were going to have, and
That's extraordinary.
The issues. Yes, a lot of Nigerians have lost sight of that fact. In other words, what we call as the Constitution today was actually a military decree. You know, so the people never really played any role in the making of what we now call the 1999 Constitution. Actually, a lot of us have the view that it is a fraudulent document, and you can't fault it. Because when in the preamble it says, we the people,
it certainly isn't the people,
certainly
is it?
It wasn't the people. It was the military government at the time, with a few people. I know that there was a constitutional committee, several of them. I mean, the military has a way of doing that. One was led by the distinguished, now deceased Professor Nikki Toby, Justice Nikki Toby of blessed memory, who did a good job. But then, when those recommendations were forwarded, it will only come as recommendations to the then head of state and his team.
Who can pick and choose.
Who can pick and choose.
Whichever bit he wants.
And I know that there was a certain gentleman who played a key role in what has turned out to be this 1999 Constitution. Professor Awalu Yadudu, who at that time was special advisor in the presidency, and you know, people like that. Now, let me put it this way. Not all provisions of the Constitution can be faulted. They did a lot of good work, a lot of good thinking in some areas.
But it's just not representative.
It is not representative of what we, the people, would want as a constitution.
And it is your contention that a new, more inclusive people's constitution is not only necessary, but it will foster unity in Nigeria, help prevent future conflicts, and possibly help end ongoing ones.
As a matter of fact, not only is a new constitution the right thing to do, not only is it fair, in my view, and in the view of most of us, a new constitution is a national imperative, as you rightly said, for a stable, inclusive, and fair Nigeria. I mean, there are so many issues that have been swept under the carpet. Because from 1966, when we had that unfortunate military incursion in our politics, and you give it to the military gentlemen, as young as they were, most of them were not even university graduates, but they did a lot in terms of infrastructure, in terms of repositioning this country as a future power. Unfortunately, we're not yet there. A lot of the things they built seaports, they built airports, they built most of the major infrastructure things they did under General Gowa, who did it for 9 years, fought a civil war to unite this country. And then Murtala Obasanjo, and then Shagari, and then Buhari, and then IBB, and so on and so forth. In terms of key infrastructure, in terms of key things to push the country forward, economically, I mean, Nigeria Airways, shipping line, they did a lot of good work. But unfortunately, the military incursion into our politics in 1966 terminated whatever was the semblance of the people's constitution that we had. From that point on, we've been governed by military decrees and military decreed constitutions that are only constitutions in name. It never had the input of the people, which is why you have in what we call as a constitution a situation where mineral rights, for example, in the Niger Delta, that are the ancestral property of the people, taken away and vested at the center, without the people ever being asked what their views were. All these laws and decrees and everything put into a constitution and enacted into existence without the consent, without even the input or even the knowledge.
But some would argue that the 1999 Constitution was a cumulative constitution in the sense that it condensed all the other things that have been done before, because there was that reference, and if you listen to IBB and you know, people like Abdul Salam Abubakar, the former head of state, that's their contention. That if you look back to, for example, the 1989 Constitution, where there was a massive constituent assembly with, you know, all the people there under IBB, they boiled down I mean, it was very representative of the Nigerian people, and you had all those people there, and that was then transmogrified, if you like, into the 1999 Constitution. I mean, how do you respond to that?
No, but there were a lot of issues that were, in my view, I don't think historically that's not correct. Yes, committees were set up, okay? And eminent personalities took part in all those constituent assembly discussions and committee discussions. Juries were involved, so many people were involved. But in the end, and this is the key point, no referendum took place. In the end, the people affected by the provisions of that constitution never had a say.
They were not consulted.
They were not consulted. Their input was not taken into consideration.
So let me ask you this then. I mean, you're a senator in the National Assembly, in the Senate. You were a member of the House of Representatives. You're a very convincing speaker. I mean, listening to you now, I doubt if anybody who's listening to you would not be swayed by your style of delivery and the conviction with which you approach your points. But I'm wondering why it is so difficult in those circumstances to get your colleagues at the National Assembly to see this issue with the same clarity with which you describe it.
Well, first of all, you see, what took place in 1966, historically, took us on a different direction. And in 1979, when the original presidential constitution was implemented, the country was taken away from the Westminster parliamentary system that we were used to and that we practiced, and most of the provisions that were discussed and agreed in the various constitutional conferences prior to Nigerian independence. That was the last time, my dear friend, that we can truly say that the people of Nigeria made some input in the making of what turned out to be their constitution.
Yeah, but I'm wondering why your colleagues don't see these points.
Yes, I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. Now, because the 1979 presidential constitution, when again they took us for whatever reason, and I disagree with that, even with all the good work that they did, the decision to take this country away from parliamentary democracy to the American presidential system, the way and manner it was done, is a major problem why we can't move forward.
And that was another military decision.
Another military decision. Now, the prescriptions in that constitution for a constitutional review are so rigid that it's very difficult for you to push through any substantial reform. I have been part of a number of these conversations. When I was in House of Reps, I remember, and I'm also now represented by
you sponsored,
Constitutional
you sponsored a bill in 2010 that was known as the Constitution Alteration Bill.
Yes, I did. Yes.
I mean, what was the knob of that bill?
That one was to address a particular issue of national crisis that arose when the former president, Yar'Adua, fell ill.
Okay, right.
And traveled without remitting the letter transmitting power to his then vice president, who later became President Jonathan. Right. Now, I responded with my colleagues. I led the move for that and sponsored an amendment to Section 145. And that's now the new law, okay? But you see, with all due respect, while that addressed that, and a lot of other issues, we have picked and chosen a few amendments on Electoral Act, on this, on judiciary, on the jurisdiction of tribunals and so on. But with all due respect, these are as good as they may be, as important as they may be in addressing specific issues. All these are not fundamental issues. The real issues that a new people's constitution in our country must address, and we all have to work together. We can argue about it. We can debate it about what should be there and the method and so on. But what we cannot run away from is a constitution that will address the issues such as what form of government is really suited for this country.
So what is stopping the National Assembly from asking those questions? So they are our representatives.
Yes,
we put them
there.
But
two things. Actually, ideally speaking, my dear friend, I'm a member of the Senate, member of the National Assembly, and by Section 4, we have the legislative powers of the Federation vested in us, you know, including the making of a law, because the making of a new constitution ultimately has to be promulgated. So it's like
absolutely,
a law.
yeah.
But fundamentally, the making of a constitution has to generate from outside the National Assembly has a role to play. But when you want to address fundamental issues such as what form of government, how do we institute mechanisms that will curtail the abuse of power?
Yeah, but you can introduce a bill.
Yes, we can. We can. But like I said, why have we not been able to create a state, for example? Why have we not been able to create local government? Take, for example, my state of Bayelsa, where by military decree, while we are grateful to General Bashar, who gave us Bayelsa, divided the old River State virtually into two parts. Most people don't know that. The state of Rivers is about 11,000 square kilometers. Bayelsa is about 10,000. So virtually split it into two. But gave Bayelsa 8 local governments. We have not been able to create more local governments. You know why? Because of these contradictions. You have now created a constitution that has tied local governments into the sharing formula of the country, where every state or local government, you get as much as you have the number of local governments. So you are not dealing with that as a political issue. It's also a funding issue. So people have not been able to create that. No one local government has been created. No one state. For example, why is the South State East having five states as against other zones? Some even have 7. No civilian administration, and particularly in this democracy, under the 1999 Constitution, as we're operating, will be able to create a state to address that injustice or that inequity. Or, in the case of Bayelsa, 8 local governments. Chief Alabese tried to address it by creating development centers. But how do you make those ones to become a part of the Nigerian Constitution? That will, because all the local governments are reflected in the schedule.
Right. So what is the solution? How do you move this thing that you're so passionate about?
Yes.
How do you move it from where it is lying in the doldrums at the moment into something that is on the front burner and that elicits the reaction of the National Assembly and, you know, the rest of the country, basically?
The conversations always go on, and we are involved, we are talking to colleagues. But you see, these issues, and that's the point I'm making, the making of a people's constitution in the comprehensive and fundamental sense we're talking about it goes beyond the National Assembly.
Yeah, but the National Assembly needs to start talking about it in a way that then inspires the rest of the country to get involved.
The National Assembly has a committee. You know, it has always had a committee.
Yeah.
And I'm a member.
Constitutional Amendment
Yes,
Committee.
it has always been there. But the point I'm making is, it's only those issues, the issues have not been fundamental and comprehensive enough. We must take those issues that affect the structure. That's why some call it restructuring. But actually, it's a call for constitutional reform, and which is what the patriots did. And I'm here to support what they did by calling on the president. I've spoken at a lot of seminars and fora, and I've had a lot of discussions formally and informally. I even took this conversation to the former president, President Muhammadu Buhari, who sat down with me and listened to me with his late chief of staff on the need for a fundamental constitutional reform. Unfortunately, I don't think he was convinced. But now the patriots have done the right thing. And as I've been saying, it is the duty of the president, while not being a member of the National Assembly, the president in our system is a lot of things combined together. The president is the head of state. The president is commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The president is leader of the country. The president is the father of the nation. So in that capacity, as Americans call it, the bully pulpit, the president has the power and the influence of his office to deploy that for any worthy cause in this country. And there's no worthier cause, my dear friend, than the call for a comprehensive review of the Constitution. A Constitution that can guarantee stability. A Constitution that can make it easy for us to develop socially, economically, politically. Otherwise, you will have this large nation of 250 million people in the next few years becoming one of the third most populous nations on the earth, perpetually at war with itself and with the rest of the world.
But of course there is
unable to achieve its potential.
But there's no evidence, is there? Because you failed to convince President Buhari. There's no evidence that President Tinubu has been convinced by that argument. And what do you say to those? Because I'm sure there are people in the National Assembly who don't agree with you.
Oh, yeah, there are conversations.
I mean, what do you say to those who insist that there are other more important issues facing Nigeria today? We've had people sitting where you're sitting, making that argument. How do you make the case to them that the current constitution has failed this country so fundamentally that there is no other issue as important or more important than a restructured Nigeria based on a people's constitution?
As a matter of fact, well, those conversations have to go. And that's the beauty of parliamentary democracy, however flawed. I mean, we interact with colleagues. We try to convince people. People try to talk to us. And that conversation should go on, not only in the National Assembly, also across the country. I mean, when the Patriots made that presentation, I'm not a member of the Patriots, but I appreciate and respect what they do and the personalities that are there. They're Patriots, really. And I've also read comments by some who not only criticized their views, but also said, well, there should be more consultation. I agree that there should be more consultation. Nobody can, from his pocket, bring a constitution for this country and foist it on us, as the military did. And that's the very call for the people, for the consultation, and that will go on.
And, it is the president, you believe, who can spur that
The president has to
process.
make it national priority. And back to the issue, whether constitutional reform should be a priority. It is a national imperative, my dear friend. Why are the local government systems not working? Now the president, even President Buhari, issued an executive order, but it wasn't followed through, unfortunately. But for me, we saw his intention, which was good, to free up the local government systems and allow them function. Okay? So Section 7 says there shall be democratic system in the local governments. But then within the Constitution, there are sections that appear to be impediments to the realization of that. This current president, through his Attorney General, and I agree with the move they have made, some disagree, but they have done something that, I was a governor, we never interfered with funds in Bayelsa. I'm sure even now, that's not our practice in Bayelsa. But I can't say that happens in other parts of the country. So they have achieved that. That is the financial autonomy. I even signed into law a bill on that purpose. I signed it for them, for the House of Assembly and the judiciary as governor. So it's not every governor that does that. But the political independence issue is there.
Yeah, that's the critical thing.
Critical thing. Yeah. So you've got to deal with so that you can free up the capacity of these centers of development. For right now, they are centers of cost and waste and centers of inefficiency, unfortunately. So how do you get that done? You have to deal with the issues of how do you check abuse of power, which is a major problem in a developing democracy. And which is why I am a supporter of the parliamentary system, where the prime minister is on his feet in the parliament every single day and is answerable to his colleagues, and it's an efficient and cheap system. And you don't have a country as diverse ethnically, culturally, and politically, and you call on a country like Nigeria one day to go and elect one person who must necessarily come from one state, one region, or one must believe in one religion, and so on. And people appeal to these primordial sentiments to gain power. Otherwise, in a parliamentary system, it's colleagues looking at themselves
Absolutely.
and getting only one of them to be their leader and prime minister.
Right.
And they can easily check abuse of power on the floor.
Absolutely.
So these issues of abuse of power, preventing waste, and providing the basis for a stable, equitable, inclusive Nigeria. A Nigeria not for a few, a Nigeria for all citizens. And a constitution that strengthens citizenship.
Right.
We haven't done that enough.
And that needs to be done.
That needs to be done. That's
and done urgently.
And done urgently.
Okay.
And the judicature. We have to ask ourselves, what are the levels of governance that can really accelerate development?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave that as a question that will need to be answered some other time.
No problem.
But I do want to thank you very much indeed. You make an extremely convincing argument.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much indeed for sharing that with us. And I would be delighted to have you back here again.
Thank you very much.
Senator Henry Seriake Dickson represents Bayelsa West at the National Assembly, and he was the governor of Bayelsa State for 8 years. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much.